Okay guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I have got a new computer. So I'm really excited about this one. I know typically I talk to you guys about cars and drones and Jeeps and try to do some cool shots with those. But for this, really it's so I can do better editing for those videos. This computer right here is going to be a monster of a machine. I'm really excited to show you all the parts that I got here. Biggest thing though, once I've got this, I can do a lot better editing and it won't take as long. I'm a huge computer hobbyist. This is a lot of fun for me. Along with all the other things that I do, I just really enjoy building, tinkering, and taking things apart. So first things first, a big piece of this computer is the motherboard, and there's quite a bit of controversy about this specific motherboard. A lot of people are upset with the way that Asus advertised it. It has a lot to do with how the CPU is powered. They're called VRMs, and they claimed it was a dual 8 VRM system, and in reality it's a parallel 4 VRM system. For a lot of you that probably doesn't mean anything. Ultimately it's the way it gets the power to the CPU, and a lot of people are upset with Asus for kind of misleading with their advertising. So I'm going to talk about this board. For my purposes though, it should be fine. I'm using the i7-9700K, which isn't a hot processor to begin with, and that's kind of where the VRMs really play into it, so I should have no issues. Otherwise though, I've got the GeForce GTX 1070 Ti. I got a killer deal on Newegg for this. It's not available anymore. Got it for under $400, which good luck finding a 1070 Ti under $400. For my boot drive, I've got the Samsung 970 EVO. The prices on these things continue to go down pretty much all the time. That's 500 gigabytes for a NVMe solid state drive. This thing's going to be blazing fast. For the majority of my storage though, I've got a Western Digital solid state serial ATA M.2 card, and then for my RAM I went with the Corsair Vengeance RGB Pro. So there's going to be a bit of color in this case. It's going to be a lot of fun. Looking forward to showing you kind of the final product. For my case, I've got the Corsair H500. It's got two 200mm fans in the front. It's got this really nice mesh screen, and then so it allows a lot of air to come in. The two 200mm fans, they're nice and big, so they're not going to be all that loud, and plenty of air to pull in through there, so it's going to be really effective. For my CPU cooling, I went with the Noctua NH-U14S. This is a beast of a radiator. It's not liquid cooling. A lot of people go with liquid cooling. For the price though, I get just about as much cooling from this guy as I would from any of your just over $100 liquid cooling systems. For my power, I'm going to be using the EVGA SuperNOVA 750G2. Again, this is a beast of a power supply, and what's really nice about your modern computers is they're really not using as much wattage as previously. So it's 80 plus gold, so that means it runs more consistent than other power supplies that don't get that gold rating. There are a couple ratings that are better than gold. There are a couple ratings that are worse than gold. This is kind of in the middle. This is a real nice, affordable power supply. Overall, this entire system is really, really well built for each other, and it's going to be a really fast machine because of it. What we're going to do now is we're going to just start putting it together. This is the part that I enjoy the most. So first things first, I'm going to put in the CPU. Now this is an i7-9700K. This is one of Intel's newest CPUs. It's got a base clock speed of 3.6 gigahertz. But from what I've seen online, most guys are able to overclock this up to 5 gigahertz. And that is my intent, to overclock this to 5 gigahertz. This goes right here on the motherboard. So there's a clip that releases out. And this guy opens up. There's a small plastic panel on here. It's going to need to come off. Now when you look at a CPU and you're going to install it, there's a couple things you're looking for. First of all, there's an arrow on the motherboard right here, and then on the card there's also an arrow So you find those two arrows and you line them up. Well, for some reason my camera wasn't recording. Ultimately though, so to install the CPU, this is going to go down, and then you're just going to slowly apply pressure, and it's going to push it into the board. Now, it is going to make some noise. It is a little bit scary to hear, but it's, as long as you got all your components lined up, it shouldn't move, and it should just press it straight down into the board. So don't let those sounds scare you too much. Alright, next up we're going to install the RAM. Make sure you follow your guidance of your motherboard. This one recommends, if you're doing 2 cards, to put them in A2 and B2. So I got 2 8 gigabit sticks of Corsair Vengeance RGB Pro. So these sticks of RAM do light up. And then it gives you a key right above it telling you which one's which. So it says A1, A2, B1, B2. So based on our instructions, we're going to put one stick in A2 and the other stick in B2. It's really only one direction that these fit in. You've got a clip on one side, and so you slide your card down. Like I said, it can only really go in one way. And then once you get it in place, you hear that click, and it's going to click right into place. Alright, so next up we're going to be installing our 970 EVO NVMe M.2. Now I got 2 sticks of M.2 solid state drives. Now this one, they're pretty amazing. They're about the size of a stick of gum. And this one's got 500 gigabytes in it. So I've got 2 M.2 ports. Each one has its cover to remove heat. A lot of the reviews said that these 2 screws were like glued down and people had a really hard time getting them off. I went ahead and tested mine before I started filming this, and I had no problems getting them off. I also have the right screwdriver, so make sure if you are having any trouble that you're using the right size screwdriver. You don't want to end up stripping the screw, because then it's much more difficult to put back on. Now I've got the 2 M.2 slots. One has serial ATA and one is just PCI Express. So the one that uses serial ATA is this one, and the one that it uses both, and the one that only uses PCI Express is the one on the left here. Now my Western Digital Blue 1 terabyte solid state drive is a serial ATA, so I'm going to put that over here, and my boot drive is just going to go in this one over here. And this is a heatsink. It looks like you'll want to remove this before putting it back on. Now, again, these can really only go in one way. You slide it into the port, kind of at an angle, and then you'll set it down. Now, you'll see it needs a screw right here. That's going to be in the box. So I'm going to have to get that out. And then it'll be the same thing on this guy. Alright, so I've got the little stud right here. I'll go ahead and just finger tight that in. Now, I do have a computer toolkit that doesn't really need to go in much tighter than finger tight. And I'm going to go ahead and put this guy back in. Slide it in, set it down. You can see it kind of wants to stand up. This is a small Phillips. And again, you don't need to do it too tight. Now it's in place. And we'll rinse repeat on the other side for the 1 terabyte. So this side's a little different. The actual heatsink is going to be what holds it down. So set it in place and then put it on. Just make sure before you set it down though, you do need to remove this guy right here, and that's going to be your heatsink. Let's see, you'll remove this little green layer. You don't want to pull the whole thing off. Kind of wants to. And again, you want to make sure your hands are clean because this is a thermal surface. It's not to keep your hand up too cool. Finger tight should be plenty on these. Next up, we've got the Noctua NH-U14S. This is cooler. We've had some radiator coolers in the past. This one is a beast. This thing is huge. So, this big radiator will sit on top of the CPU. It's got a Noctua fan, which is a very high quality fan. The kit comes with mounting brackets, some thermal paste, and some tools to screw things down. And looks like some fan extensions as well. First thing you want to install is this mounting bracket that goes underneath. So you'll lift up your board and slide right into place. And there's really only one way you can put it on. It's going to line up with your 3 screw holes. And then, so there's your mounting bracket. Next we're going to install these 4 plastic grommets. And then on top of each grommet, install these metal brackets. Alright guys, and then again, just make sure these are on the right way. I got them on backwards. Got to my fitment point and double checked fitness, and I realized I had them on backwards. So you've got 4 locking screws that's going to go in each corner. Now, initially I put them all kind of finger tight, just where they touch the metal. And then I'd slowly go around and tighten them all. And what they'll do is they'll slowly pull that back plate up to where it's supposed to be. Now each one will screw down to a point where it'll actually stop, and that's where you want to get it to. So what I would do is I get them all finger tight, kind of go in a cross pattern until they're all fairly tight. And then I'd go back in with a screwdriver, just tighten each one down until it stops. Now you don't need to crank these down, you don't want to break your motherboard, you definitely don't want to snap anything, that's expensive. So at this point I would go ahead and check for fitment. Make sure it sits on there nicely. There should be a screw on either side that lines up with the side. And what this is going to do is it's got springs on each one, it's going to pull down and it's going to pull your radiator closer to your CPU. Now fitment looks good. I'm going to go ahead and put on a thermal compound. This kit does come with an additional mounting hardware, so you can attach an additional fan if you want to run 2 fans onto it. Completely up to you. I am not. Now, thermal paste is one of those things where you really don't need a lot. It's really just filling the gaps between the 2 smooth surfaces, and there shouldn't be too many gaps. There's a few different methods guys like to use. Instructions say use a pea-size drop. They do claim that too much thermal paste can actually cause problems in cooling. I've watched videos where they've tested that theory, and it doesn't seem to matter one way or another. So I would go ahead and just follow the directions, or whatever method is your preferred. And now we're ready to mount it. So get your screws lined up and set it down. And up on both sides, and then I'm just going to screw down on each side. You want to do it pretty evenly. You don't want to do one side over the other. And again, I just go back and forth. And you will tighten these screws until they get all the way down flush. They will get to a point where they can no longer go down any further. And that's when you stop tightening. And the CPU radiator is installed. All right, next up, we're going to go ahead and start installing things into the actual case. All right, next up we've got our Corsair H500. It is got a large glass panel on the side here. It's nice, it's got a nice lip on the bottom there. This is a fragile piece, so you want to be careful when you're removing these to not accidentally break your panel. It will just sit in place, so you don't have to worry too much, but still, I wouldn't screw around with it too much. And I'd put it somewhere safe. And you can see this has got a nice large space in here. It's got 3 fans, so the 200mm fans in the front, and then 120mm fan in the back for exhaust. You've got your back panel. It comes off with just 2 screws. This is where you'll hide all your wires. And we've also got these are really nice. These are for hiding your power supply. This is for larger drives if you want to use one of those. I'm not planning on using any larger drives right now. I will just leave this in here though. I have no reason to pull it out at this time. You do have a bunch of wires that comes with the system, and we will be hooking those up. It also has this wire mesh that's just attached magnetically, which is really nice. It'll make it really easy to clean later. I do like that. And it's got plenty of mounting points on the top here, so if you do want to mount an additional 200mm fan on the top, or if you're going to do liquid cooling, you can mount it up here as well. You also have space to mount your liquid cooling on the front. So the case itself comes with a bunch of these little studs for mounting your motherboard, and you're going to want to put one in every spot that says A, which is pretty much all the way around the board. So I'm going to go ahead and install all of these. It does come with a little tool to use a screwdriver if you don't have one of these. Make sure you actually get them down tight. You don't want them sticking up. Again, these are one where you're going to screw it down until it actually stops. And then it won't go anymore, and you'll do that for all of them. And with Movie Magic, I'll be done. Alright, so we got all those motherboard mounting brackets in. Next I'm going to go ahead and install our power supply. Now there's a thumb screw on the back to remove this plate right here. It just slides forward and then comes out. And now this is where a bunch of your wires are coming through. Now I'm actually not going to have any of these wires come to right here, so they're all going to come out and we're going to install those later. Right now I'm just going to get them out of the way so I can get to installing my power supply. Like I said, I got the EVGA 750G2, great power supply. And you notice that the exhaust vent for the power supply is on the bottom of the case. I really like that. Most of them are designed for that now anyway. As you can see the way the writing is, the fan is meant to exhaust to the bottom. So this is just going to go in place here. And there are 4 screws that are going to go in there. I'm not going to waste your time watching that. Alright, so I've got my 4 screws installed for my power supply. Now the next thing you need to figure out, before I put in my motherboard, I just want to make sure I get all my cables fed through that I need to install. So first things first, the big one you're going to need is your motherboard power. So this one you're going to need pretty much no matter what. So I'm going to go ahead and get this guy put in here. Make sure it clicks into place. I'm going to need 1 power for my video card. And I'm going to need a power for my CPU. And that's a 8-pin, and then another 8-pin for my EVGA. And that should be all I need, because I'm actually not running any serial ATA, anything outside of what's actually running on the motherboard. If I run into something else that I need later, I'll let you know, but I think at this time, that's all I'm going to need. I'm going to go ahead and plug those in and then route those through this hole right here, and that's going to be hidden behind everything once I'm all done hooking everything up. So next I'm going to go ahead and install the motherboard, and then we'll start routing wires to the motherboard. Just be real careful on this point. Got a lot done so far. You don't want to whack anything, you don't want to scratch anything. Just be really careful when you're installing this. Now your motherboard might not have the faceplate on it pre-installed like mine does, so make sure before you put this in that you actually install the metal plate, because you're gonna be mad at yourself later when you have to come back and install it, take everything out, and then put it in if you want to have that metal plate. I mean, you don't need it, but it definitely looks better with it in there. And then just make sure you've got it's nice and lined up with all your holes, and then go ahead and put all your screws in. And I did read some reviews about this motherboard, and that because the faceplate is on it, that sometimes it's harder to get the alignment on the screws. It does look like it's off just a little bit, but I think that's going to be fine. Like, it's not off a lot. Your case is going to come with a bunch of screws to mount your motherboard. Just make sure you use the right ones. And these are the screws you're going to want to mount your motherboard with. Kind of a flat edge. So you're going to put one of those on each of these. Now they are designed to kind of ground out where they're at so they don't touch anything. I'm not going to put any one of them in tight just yet. I want to make sure I get a bunch in first. And once I get a bunch in, I'll start putting them down. Now, it is okay to use a magnetic screwdriver in here. You're not going to ruin anything unless you've got like an crazy strong magnet, which most screwdrivers do not have one that powerful. We got all our screws in, so our motherboard's not going anywhere. While we're at it, I've got this chassis fan right here on my motherboard. There's a spot right here that says chassis fan, so I'm going to go ahead and hook that guy up right there. Make sure you get it on there right. This is a 3-pin, it's a 4-pin slot, so I did have it on there. And then next what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and stand it up and start feeding wires through to it. Alright, the trick to good wire management is having your cables come out as close to where they're plugging in. So push it through around it.
Make them open as possible. I'm gonna look at this one back and forth. Determined that we use one more CPU cable. So I went ahead and ran that one as well. And because there was an option for an additional 4 pin to go with the motherboard. I'm going to hook up our 2 CPU cables. This is another item that a lot of new motherboards have been coming with. It's really convenient. It's for your power and your LEDs for the front of your case. Normally you just have to plug these onto the motherboard one at a time, so these all come from the front of the case. And it's a little different on every board, so they can't just put it on one thing like this. But what's nice is this board provides me with this, so I can attach them all ahead of time. So just make sure you line them up. You've got your reset switch, your power, your LED. Some of them it doesn't matter, like your power switch and your reset switch. There's no positive or negative. It's just closing a circuit. But your power LED and your hard drive LEDs, that does have a positive and a negative. So just make sure you're following the guideline on this and making sure you're hooking up everything to the right side. So I'm going to go ahead and hook these up and then see you on the other side. So our front panel plugs in right here, and with this hookup there's really only one way to put it on, so go ahead and slide that on, just like that. That's much easier than previous boards. Okay, next up we've got our USB hub that's going to provide your USB to all of your case USBs. We've got a couple more connectors that need to go in. This one's a USB, so you've got a few USB ports over here. It's got a missing gap. That's how you know which way it goes in. So that goes in there. This is your HD audio. Same thing. Missing a gap on the second one, so you know that it's got to go on this one right here. That's your HD audio port. I'm going to plug that guy in right there. Now this case comes with RGB controller, or these RGB lights, and they plug into the RGB header that's on the case, or that's on the motherboard here. Now you got to make sure you put it on the right way. There's a small arrow on the one side, and there's 12 volt marking on the header. So you got to make sure that you put the arrow on the 12 volt marker, which is on this. On my case, it is the left. I just want to make sure you get that on the right. Alright, got that in there. The only thing I really have left to hook up at this point is my graphics card, and then put the fan on my CPU. So yeah, next up we're going to hook up our CPU fan. So it does have an indicator on it showing the direction that it's going. I want it to be going towards the back of the case, so I'm going to be mounting my fan this direction. You can either mount it like this and get to your fan port, which I don't have the length to do that, so I'm going to flip it over and then I'll mount it like this. Be careful with these fans, they are kind of sharp. I did whack my knuckle on it earlier. And then let me get this mounted on here. And we've got our fan on there pretty tight. And you notice that the clearance on the memory is pretty darn close, so if and when I do upgrade my memory, I'm going to have to put the fan either on the other side or mount my fan the other direction, which I don't think it's going to fit even with the other direction. So I'm probably going to stick with the 2 sticks of RAM, and if I do upgrade I'll probably just get 2 larger RAM. And so now that fan's going to hook up. I've got CPU fan right at the top up here. And that's where I'm going to hook that up. Alright, so we've got the CPU fan hooked up. Not going to lie, that would have been significantly easier if I would have done it while it was out. Just make sure you recognize you got a AIO pin and a optional CPU pin right next to it. So your primary CPU fan is going to be to the far right. You can see where that guy's hooked up. Last but not least, I have this final chassis fan. There's a 3-pin. We'll put a 3-pin on a 4-pin. Just make sure you put it on the right 3. And you can tell based on how the clip goes on. Alright, so there's our CPU. I'll do a little bit more wire management, but for the most part this is pretty much how it's going to look. You notice how clean it is. There's really not a whole lot of wires out, which is really nice. And once we get the back panel on, you won't even see any of the wires. So overall, I'm really happy with this build. And then once I get everything hooked up and plugged in, we'll get to see that RGB. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and hook it up and see if the BIOS boots up. So we'll see that in just a second. Alright, the motherboard has power. And one way we can quickly tell that is because it's glowing. It's pretty cool. I'll get some shots in the dark. I'm going to go ahead and give it a shot. Wow, this is a really quiet machine. There she is. Alright, looks like it's working. We've got our CPU, 3.6 megahertz, temperature 22 degrees Celsius. Cool, well I'm not going to bore you by making you watch me install Windows. When I come back I'll be installing the graphics card. Alright guys, successful boot, successful Windows install, all my updates are installed. So now I'm going to go ahead and install my video card. So first thing you want to do is you want to remove these 2 screws right here because we're going to be removing those metal plates. Once plates are out, we don't need them anymore. We do want to keep these screws though because we'll use these when we reinstall our graphics card. This is our graphics card, the GeForce GTX 1070 Ti. It has 8 gigabytes of RAM and is really one of the fastest, best, affordable graphics cards you can buy out there. The 1080 and the 1080 Ti are a little bit better, but this one can actually overclock to be about as good as a 1080. NVIDIA recently released the RTX 2080, 2070, and 2060 series. This is better than the 2060, and honestly, this is a really good card, and for the price that I got it for, it's much better than anything that's out there, so I'm really happy with the deal I got. So this runs on a PCI Express 3 slot. Make sure you remove some rubber on the bottom here, so make sure you take that off. And then just, that slides back, and you're going to sit it down. And it just automatically closes over it. And then just make sure you don't forget to put those 2 screws back in. And then take your power and install that. So put these 2 screws back in, do a little bit of cable management, and show you the finished product.
Hey guys, so if you made it this far, thanks for watching my video. I really appreciate it. I really hope you enjoyed it. I made a few little ads at the last minute, that's why I'm wearing a different shirt now. Added a few extra LED lights and the Rick and Morty bobblehead, and I think it really just kind of completes the build. If you really like this video and you want to see more like it, please let me know in the comments section. I love tech stuff, so I'm more than willing to talk about more tech stuff. And if you want to see more videos like this, please like, subscribe, and then hit that bell if you want notifications for when my new videos do come out. This was a lot of fun, and I really hope you enjoyed the amount of work that I put into editing this video. It did take a lot of time, and but it was a lot of fun. I got to edit on my new computer, and so it's been pretty cool. Again, I really hope you like the video, and I'll see you in the next one.